So welcome everybody. This is the We Are All Related series. We were actually going to take a little break until September, um, and then we had this call to maybe do one more thing before then. And the purpose of what We Are All Related is to learn from a number of people their perspective on our directional statements, especially the ones that address racism and the way that we are working toward reducing racism in our society and among us as well. This session came up because APC and CCC had a little conversation about maybe it might be interesting to get the perspective of somebody from another culture about how they look at leadership and in anticipation of the upcoming election in April of our community. And so that's when the idea of inviting Basil to be with us and to talk to us about his perspective on leadership. So thank you all for being here. It looks like a nice sized crowd today, this afternoon. Um, and welcome.
Thank you, Suzanne, Luann. Um, Welcome, everyone, for your sacred presence during this time of opening our hearts and our minds and letting spirits intentionally speak to them during this short time. Basil and Charlotte Brave Heart are dear companions on my journey, and I wish to say Pilameye to both of them, thank you for being with us today. Basil Braveheart is a Lakota spiritual leader, author, counselor, school administrator, and resides on the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation in South Dakota. His life story is shared in his book titled A Spiritual Journey of a Brave Heart. A lifetime of learning from his grandparents, elders, and spiritual intelligence has, has humbled him in his sharing with many around the world. More recently, he led the changing of the name of Harney Peak to Black Elk Peak in the Black Hills of South Dakota. He acknowledges a profound attunement to the physical, psychological, and spiritual bridging in his own words from his book, quote, "The world of metaphor, circles, and connection," to that of, quote, "straight lines, squares, and separation," unquote. It is with deep gratitude now I invite Basil on behalf of all of us gathered to open our time together with a prayer, followed by your sharing, Basil.
Thank you, sister. Autopeaksy mitakripi. Leon Petromo akhe ina ate onkupero. Chale oche kewakakele chonwashtea yuha nope chiyuza pero mitakripi. Ho mitakriasi. The translation is I honored my grandmother, my grandfather, which is how we address our divinity. And I gave thanks to giving us another sacred day to model the values that the Anointed One, Christ, and also the Anointed One in our culture tradition, the white cow buffalo woman. So I extended my warm handshake to all of you from my heart, not from my cognition, but from my heart. It is the center of when we look into our heart and we see the heart is responding in a way that gives us better understanding our spiritual life, we can go ahead and share these things. So my handshake is to all of you from my heart. And thank you very much for allowing me to be here. It's an honor to be here to share the Lakota principles in which we select and how we follow our traditions on using some very interesting ways to bring our people together and collectively ask someone to be our servant, not our leader. So, sister, do you want me to continue now or what?
Yes, Basil.
Okay. Okay, first of all, I use the word anointed one to refer to Christ and to the black, white cow buffalo one, because the word Christ comes from the Greek word meaning the anointed one. Someone, in our case, is also someone and something. It could be a flower. It could be a buffalo. It could be a horse. It could be water. It could be breath. But the anointed one is someone or something that models the values of our culture. So to begin with, I can remember being in family conversations after our meal in the evening. After every meal, after my grandfather turns the kerosene light off, he is like the family crier, which tells us what's going on at Red Cloud School. At that time is Holy Rosary Mission, and how they're trying to teach some of the dogma to our people. And so we have become more acquainted the mission and the way that the church was guiding us, teaching us on how to to become what they want us to be. But I can remember very clearly when, after the Wounded Knee massacre in 1890, there's a disruption. There was a disruption of the community and the people and what happened. But what I saw that was very, to me, enlightening and very interesting, that I saw my people come together and practice what my grandma told me when she asked me to change Black Elk Peak from Harney Peak. And here's how she said it in Lakota. She said, Takoza, we all piatakia takun lila wasteshnicha mila hanska oyateki wa kainjana wiam misaktekalo. Whereas takun chisha think to walking tuza ogna umo. Hitchana shniki lila techia yaunktelo. Translation. He said, grandson, there's something very difficult that happened towards where the sun comes up, called Wounded Knee. The long knives had taken lives of our young children, our grandmas, and our grandpas. But when I say this to teach you a very important value that you may embrace for the rest of your life. If you don't, you'll have a very difficult time. You'll be a very hateful. She didn't use she was talking all Lakota. My grandma didn't go to school. She never read a book. Everything she was teaching, it was to me divine wisdom. And she said, live in a forgiving way. Not only do you forgive people that did to you, but you must be aware to forgive yourself every morning. Things that you think and what you do to yourself. Getting angry at yourself is a very important part of this forgiveness life. When you get angry, you can secrete a lot of different chemicals like cortisone. And she didn't say that, but since I knew that's what she was saying. And it affects your being, it affects your health. Resentments, jealousy, all of those you need to make amends to yourself because your creator has already forgiven you. And she was taking me to what we call in Lakota a hollow bone principle. Hollow bone is a clearing of your soul, your mind, your heart, and your body to be someone that can mitigate the divine energy that in a Lakota tradition we live in. Our reference to the divine is something in sacred motion. Everything in the universe is in sacred motion, and everything in the universe is connected and related. I know that what I just said is statements from the quantum physics principle, but the Lakota language is based deeply in quantum physics. And so that's the reason why I have begun to teach this. But what I'm going to say about this leadership thing is I saw the people after Wounded Knee move and lived the values of what they were taught. To be forgiving, don't hate or have any prejudice towards the cavalry. Pray for their parents. Pray for their grandparents and their grandparents because they don't understand what they're doing. And so in our tradition, we don't hate, we don't have prejudice, and we live. Another value is unconditional love, and that word in Lakota is wo tehila ugna'um, unconditional love. First of all, she said, love yourself unconditionally. And she also said earlier, love yourself so you can forgive yourself. If you forgive yourself, you can love. If you don't forgive yourself, how can you love? How can you be a hollow bone? And also bring into your divine book that in your dreams, the dreams is writing a book about your soul. And so you can keep track each day when you meditate and pray what you should do today. So going back to the resilience, the spiritual values that they practice, they forgave the cavalry, they forgave the federal government. Now, I'm going to have to insert something I'm saying right now. Has that continued? We had to have a difficult time with that. I'm talking about some of my elders. I'm 91 years old, so I'm talking about people that were the first to be on the reservation, coming from the Powder River, where they lived with the buffaloes and the elk and the deer, without any encumbrance from any interference. So they lived in nature, and nature is our spiritual center. Everything that we know comes through nature, because nature is divinely created, and everything is created in that way to model the values. The horses model those values, the buffalo, the elk, the water, the air, the light, and Mother Earth. So that's our primary essence of how we live. To live a life that we honor each other and all creation. In fact, we have an unwritten document that we need to be loving and caring for all animals and for trees and for flowers and all the animals, because they are part of the divine creation and we are related to all of them. So it requires us to live every day in a life of prayer. So when she told me, she said, when you get up, take 5 breaths and sacramento those 5 breaths. And then touch your heart and feel the vibration of your heart. That's the divine vibration that includes the holography of the universe and to the uncalled source, which is our divine. And so when you get up, every step you take, make it a prayer. When you walk on Mother Earth, it's likened to walking on the soul of your grandmother. When you see in the fall leaves falling from the tree is teaching you how to let go, how the tree and the leaf let go with love. But when these leaves come to the Mother Earth, their other spiritual function is to give Grandma a shawl of its multi-colors of all the leaves. And the next shawl she will be receiving would be a white shawl. So, and also she taught me about forgiveness. When we went out to pick cherries on the way coming back, she said, follow your footsteps, see if you can find a wild flower that you stepped on. And I did. And she said, see if you can smell the divine fragrance that the flower is still sharing, even though you stepped on it. And I did. And so she said, when you're in a hollow bone, you're one with the fragrance. You're one with the color. Each color of that flower has its own divine signature and its own vibration. So is the fragrance. And so is the structure of that flower. Look at it. It also is in divine relationship with the cosmos. And also, she told me at that time, she said, what you are moving towards this hollow bone is, I'll say in Lakota, she said, Takoja nosula onki talki wakantanka nasulaka wanjilalo. Our human brain is one with a universal brain. When you're a hollow bone, and when you live in a forgiving, loving, and honoring and thanksgiving, that hollow bone is clear, and you can. Now, she didn't tell me this. I mitigated this later on. It took me 40 years. That we have 89 billion neurons in our human brain. When we live in this way and mitigate all these things, these values, what we do is we awaken more neurons, and we're not able to see how many neurons are awakened, but they're awakened, and that's how my grandparents received this divine language, this divine message. That I know is very hard to believe, but I just recently got some letters from Switzerland that the scientists have a research center, and it's called the Blue Brain Project. And they're saying exactly what I just shared with you. Our brain is connected to the divine brain. So going back to how we select a leader is this. The tribe takes very serious, very reverent, prideful seriousness when they select someone to be our servant. And this selection isn't an attraction. I mean, it is an attraction. It's attracted to how this person has able to live a life, a forgiving life, a person of grateful, a person who takes care of the widows, a person who takes care of the orphans, a person who takes care of the elderly. And whenever they go and get some meat, they're also shared with all the people, the elderly, the homeless, the widowed. And when I say when the tribe is making a selection, this person is not living in that way to become someone. So the tribe recognize who that person is going to be when it comes time to find a leader, someone who is modeling the values of the tribe. Because that leader is going to be a reflection of the tribe, a reflection on how this leader conducts his or her life with herself, first of all, in her immediate family, extended family, and in the community and in a tribe, and also how this person will carry these values out into the open and be part of a bigger world. It's not based on promotion. Whenever a person is going to be selected for a leadership position, this person doesn't go out and hold talks about himself or herself, what they did and what they didn't do. The people already know, because it goes back to the selection is they already know who has modeled these values in the community. Not just someone who talks about it, someone who lives in it. And so when we select someone like that, we take ownership of our selection. That's a very important part of selecting someone to lead you. But also, it's not really a leader. I guess you can say that he does lead, but his primary purpose is to serve. So whenever you go to a dinner or somewhere, this person always is last to eat. And that is an act of humility, but also allowing the children, the elderly, the crippled to eat first. That is the mark of a traditional person who the tribe asks the divine to be part of this huge selection of a person who is going to be responsible for the tribe's well-being, their physical well-being, their emotional well-being, their mental well-being, but their spiritual well-being. The spiritual part takes precedence because whenever this person is selected and asked to be the servant, the people gather in different ceremonies in their different locations, and they pray and ask the divine spirit to acknowledge their selection. Almost everything that we do is taken to a ceremony and asked by the spirits to give us reflection if our selection has been something that is congruent with the divine. Now, having said all these things, we have gone through a very difficult time since Wounded Knee, the second Wounded Knee, and a lot of different massacres. The boarding school, what happened in the boarding school, I'm not going to go into that. I forgave that because people always ask me, why do you go to church? I said, because I forgave. And the second thing he asked, why did you go in the military and serve in the military? Because I forgave. So leadership is a very sacred, I don't know, Lakota will be a leadership is what I would say in Lakota, which so when I'm gonna try to translate that word we I'm gonna break it down. First of all, there's a word called we, which means light. What does light mean in our tradition? It means truth. That's why we call women we, a sacred light in motion who carry the truth. And because the women are the center of the Teospai, the extended family. When we put a tipi up, and when it's complete, the woman is sits at the center. She's in charge of the food, the clothing, the emotion of the family, but also she teaches the divine teaching of our young people. She's a very nurturing, loving, caring person. And because of that, a lot of us have grown up being very close to our grandmother. Our grandmothers are the center of our tribe. It's a matriarchal tribe that, yes, the women do allow the men to become spokespeople, but the final answers or the final things that need to be talked about and passed in whatever it is, the women are asked to make that decision for them. But somehow that shifted for a while, where patriarchy moved in and caused a little friction that women were pushed back. But the women weren't pushed back. They just said, we'll let you go ahead and do the speaking, but we are the final decision makers. So I think that I really have to say is that we also look through the fruits of this person that's going to be selected. The fruits on how this person lives his or her life and how this emanates the behavior of this leader or this servant and how it's moved into the community and how children, adolescents, and adults model that behavior of that person that is our servant. That's huge in our community, in our way of life. That tells us that this selection that was made by the tribe to have this servant lead is divinely, it's one of the emanations of the divine. By this person being connected to his or her divinity in a deep way and lives that way, he models all those values. And so it becomes like a spiritual virus. The rest of the community began to model that, to model those ways in which this person is living. I lived in that way of life for a period of time. And I'm very fortunate to be able to have that experience because it was that way of life that brought me to who I am today. I have no other way to explain it because I lived with some people who were loving, forgiving, honoring animals, people, and nature. And every day they get together and say an act of thanksgiving. Every meal they burn sage, cedar, or sweetgrass. And when they burn that, what they tell us is that this particular cedar is divinely infused with the uncaused source. So when we light this cedar with this match, you see it as smoke. What we see and what we know is that cedar's spirit has been released. And so the fragrance and optically we see the smoke, but the smoke is the spirit of the cedar. And so we are participating in the divine vibration of the holy. Our prayer is we awaken each morning and be asked to access the divine vibration. When I went to the boarding school, what it appeared to me that the prayer was asking for something. It's a petition. And I heard most of them talk about God and not talk to God. Now, this is not a criticism, but I guess I was really aware and awakened to the difference. And all our ways is we access when we awaken to the first breath, drink the water, take the walk, hear a bird. We are thankful because all these are divine synchronicity that are divinely. Here's what my grandma said: whenever we hear a bird or see a hawk or see a flower or see a person that is making something that is very, really good for the people, the divine is present in all what you see. And she says in Lakota, Taku Wamakon Chanichipa Zopelo. The divine is showing you something sacred. When you see a tree, she said, what you don't see, which is the roots of the tree, supports what you do see. What a metaphor. I don't see the roots, but the roots is a metaphor for the divine holding that tree in prayer. The arms of the tree paying homage. A flower, water. And she told me, she said, Listen to the water. The water sings. And she said, everything sings in the universe. And says, your church people call it universe, because I tried to translate something. She says, doesn't una mean one and verse means one song? Aren't we living under one song in the universe? And she said, don't criticize anybody's religion. Because I told her, I said, they told me in the catechism that that this world was the center of the universe. I came back and told her, and she said, no, again, don't criticize them. She said, ours is connected to the whole universe. We're related to the stars. We're related to the universe, everything. So there was a difference in what I was taught. And also this leader who we just are selecting to be our chief and to be our servant, needs to know these things so he can continue to teach the people our way of life, our spiritual way of life. It's not an anthropocentric theology. When ours was at that time a cosmological theology. What I mean by anthropocentric, because the language the Western people use is a Newtonian language. It uses only 30 sounds, and it's a non-foundational language. Just like I'm saying, like oxygen. Oxygen really means to beget what? To beget the divine. That's why I believe that the breath is referred to as the Holy Spirit. So our way of life is also one with this leader or this servant. So it is more of a communal being one. This servant is not separate. He doesn't have an office. He doesn't ride a special horse. He is a common man or a common woman and speaks the truth. So I hope that I have shared with you something that I experienced when I was 6 or 7 years old. But also, I think that some of our traditional things were not practiced. For example, when my mom was pregnant, she told my aunts and my grandma. So they came twice or three times a month and prayed to me when I was in a fetus state. They prayed about the values. They sang songs. They drummed the vibration of the universe. And when I was birthed, the women were the spiritual midwives. So they birthed me, and they opened my mouth saying that this is the portal. This breath is like the songs of the universe. It's the vernacular of the human soul. Music is the vernacular of the human soul. So is breath. And I just researched the stuff that just came out from a book that was written about the Black Hills of South Dakota, about the earth becoming the earth. And they're saying we didn't come from the crust. We came from underneath. But what's really interesting, when they further mitigate the whole composition, breath is oxygen. And the divine created the oxygen for this planet and for all life to live. Without oxygen, we won't be able to exist. And I'm not going to the other part, but the other one part is the photosynthesis from the sun. That's a whole different one. That's amazing. But all of this fits with all of the different origins of life on this planet. Different language, but goes to the same thing. It's amazing. So I want to thank you. I think that my time is running short here, and so I better turn it over to Susie.
Well, thank you so much. I hated to turn on my camera and didn't want to interrupt what you were saying because it was just brilliant, and we're so grateful for you. I'm going to allow everybody else to be able to turn their microphones on. So while I am looking for that, would you go ahead and tell us about that photosynthesis?
Photosynthesis, in its most generic meaning, as if it wasn't for light, we would not exist. So I also mitigated a lot of the Aramaic prayers that Christ spoke. So I spent a lot of time researching the Dead Sea Scrolls and Nag Hammadi parchment they found in 1945 in Egypt, but also there's some other documents that came, and I want to get some copies of it. I just read it where in the beginning there was a gathering. This is what was written by a human being. And in this gathering, the divine selected different spirits to carry out different functions. And the first person that in this written document they gave to a woman, and this was called wisdom. And the divine said, your function is to carry the divine message of self.
Wow, that is just amazing. I have unmuted everybody so that they can do that. And I would remind you that if you can, go ahead and click the button to raise a hand. Pat Bombard, you did a great job of raising your hand. You get to go first.
Thank you so much for this whole opportunity to be a part of your life story and to experience your community's understanding of how to choose a leader. Very, very helpful. I was in 1986, I went to Pine Ridge for 2 or 3 weeks, and I was there in the parish that subsequently was destroyed by a tornado, I think.
Yes.
Yeah, because when I went looking for it years later, I couldn't find it. But I wanted to touch on this last thing that you said, because I recently had an experience myself of reflecting on the fact that the sun is 92 million miles from the earth, and that sunlight comes and it awakens something in plants that we then as humans eat and are nourished by. And so I don't really have a question. I just wanted to affirm what you're saying in how if we just take a moment to stop and think about the interrelationship and even the amazing distances that and the amount of time that it has taken us to reach this point in our human journey. It is everything that you said. It's amazing, it's fascinating, it's interesting, it's wonderful, and we need to spend more time in that space. So thank you again.
Thank you.
Have we somebody else who has a question?
I do. I'm trying to.
Okay, Marianne, go ahead.
This isn't a question as so much of a comment of appreciation. All while you were speaking, what was stirring deep inside of me is what our BVM constitutions describe as the first qualification of leadership, and it is spiritual leadership. And this afternoon, at least for me, you offered me just a very beautiful, meaningful, significant description of what it means to live spiritual leadership. So I want to thank you for that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Marilyn, you're next.
I don't have a question. I just have a heart filled with gratitude. And so it also connects me with the fact that I need to talk to my grandmothers. I only knew one of them when she lived only shortly when I was born, and the other one passed soon when I was. So thank you. My heart is full, and I think I need to call on my grandmothers.
Luann.
Thank you. Basil, I was wondering, I was very, very struck too by the emphasis of, is there a leader who is able to look after the well-being of the whole of everybody? And I think my question is that the responsibility only of the leader, or is it kind of a co-responsibility among everybody in the community?
It is a core responsibility because our aim for everyone is to be a hollow bone. I had a dream of one of our spiritual leaders called Andrew Fool's Crow. I know that Sister Pat probably heard about him. She was here in Pine Ridge. He was a prolific spiritual leader. But hollow bone simply means you are carrying yourself in a way that you are allowing the divine energy to come forth through you, and you can miraculously, I'm going to use that word miraculously, awaken beings by the energy that you are carrying. And you have to be very humble about that. You can't say, I got this energy. That isn't what it is. All of you in here, all of you that I'm talking to today, you're all awakened beings. I'm talking to your people who have dedicated your life. One of the things that our leadership, I forgot to say, is it's called we teach you, we choka. But it goes to being a humble servant. You give your life, you give yourself. When we Sundance, that's what we do. We give ourselves. The only thing that we can give is the blood, which is the soul. Women don't have to do that because they already naturally do that. And so you give to the tree, which is the center of the universe and is in perfect intercourse with Mother Earth and the divine, which is the above and below principle, but also that's the kinetic energy connecting to the potential. So our brain is vacillating up and down. When we're in a hollow bone, we go to a higher vibration and able to hear and see and smell the divinity in the flowers.
Thank you. Pat?
Basil, thank you from my heart to your heart. You used the Lakota word for leadership, and then you began to share the beginning. You took that word apart, and the first part you shared was light. And could you share the other two parts of that word in Lakota for leadership? What that means?
We cho.
Yes.
So we is light and cho is an abbreviated word going to people.
People.
Yeah. Going to Chiospai.
Okay.
And the word is a vibration. Remember I told you, our language is a wordless language. It's not a written language. It's a vibrational language. That's why the scientists, they said they discovered that the whole universe is in divine, is in vibration. They don't use the word holy or divine. We do. And that's been proven. So is a deep bringing of your deep center of your voice center, your linguistic center, word. So that's what it means, that it's emphasizing the vibration, that we are connected to the uncaused, no beginning or end of the center or the source, which is God. In ours, it could be Ina or Arte. We speak in a non-duality language. So when I say Mother Earth, Mother or Father, it's one. It's not a duality language. English language is a duality language. It goes to this Newtonian principle. Newtonian is mechanistic. Sir Isaac Newton thought the universe was like a clock. And also, it's very materialistic. And I'm sorry to say, I studied this with other worldly linguistics, and they're also saying with other different languages, it's a commerce language. So most of our divine teaching, Christ is a good one too. If you really read the Beatitudes and do some interpretation with other scholars, it's there. Like, our Father who art in heaven. Now, scholars are saying heaven is not a location. Heaven is not a location. It's right here. When you're a hollow bone, you're living in it. You make your heaven. And the other one goes, our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. That goes to another scientific term, kinetic to a potential energy. But also it goes to this. This symbol here is in our teepees. My grandma teaches us every day. She said, we're living in the divine energy of the Creator. When we pray and we honor the symbology of who we are, we're just a symbol of a divine. We're a reflection of the divine. And there's a lot of ways to tell it. We're in the image. You know, that one there, I don't get it, because we are made in the image. I don't know if we need to see that more deeply.
I think we do. And Margaret, I think we have time for your question before we need to wrap up.
Okay.
Okay. Just my question real quick. We talked about leadership. And so from the outside, being from another culture, I always think, the chieftains, first of all, thank you for your wisdom and sharing your wisdom of the Dakota people. It really strikes me, and I feel like this is truth. But now from an outsider looking in, it does look like you're a patriarchal society, because, you have the chiefs and all that, and those are hereditary. So how does the roles of the chieftain work with the leadership roles that you talked about?
I need to ask you to reframe that. I just didn't get it. What you say? You say that it looks patriarchal,
It
but
looks
it's really matriarchal.
Well, from an outsider looking at the Dakota or cultures, it looks patriarchal because the spokesmen are the males, the men. But I'm also wondering, I know that the chiefs are hereditary. So what if the chief doesn't have the values of the people?
Those those questions are considerably important to the Lakota people because we have had people who are receive the leadership by hereditary means are challenged because they are not they're not qualified in the eyes of the extended family and the community. They don't recognize that person. Is that your answer?
Yeah, that's very interesting. Yeah,
But
thank you.
it's also matriarchal.
Mm-hmm.
It's a matriarchal. My grandma, who I use as an example of teaching, taught me. She was very quiet. She never said a bad word, never cussed, never pushed anybody, never demanded anything. But when she talks, it's like E.F. Hutton, is that name you call that guy? When E.F. Hutton talks, listen, right?
Mm-hmm.
When my grandma talked very quietly, you listen. In our Lakota society, it's the woman.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to just give you just a very recent thing that happened. When this white cow buffalo was born at Yellowstone, they had a ceremony at Yellowstone, and they checked the different symbols on that calf. And that's the original symbol that was given to the Lakota people. We don't know when, thousands of years. Time is not important in our language because when we talk about quantum vacuum, past, present, and future is in it. And there's things coming out that you're gonna understand what I'm talking about very soon because it's coming out. There's books coming out talking about that. But anyway, this grandma had a dream and she saw eruptions all over the planet. And she went to the tribal council and said, our grandma has got a fever. We have not treated her well. She has got a fever. The oceans are dying. We are taking the trees down. The trees are the lungs of our planet. Our water is only 3% of fresh water on this universe. We have disregarded our water, our air, and our Mother Earth. And so we are moving towards another cycle. In our tradition, the buffalo was standing on 4 legs. Now some of the elders saying that the buffalo is standing only 1. Now this isn't a doomsday thing. But don't say that. Don't think that I'm saying that. It's in our tradition. It's an amazing part of our evolution. Now, in the Christian Bible, you got a time when everyone is going to be taken to its primal zip code. In our Lakota tradition, it's the same thing. It's not punishment, it's resurrection. I look forward to that.
How blessed we are, Basil, to have had your presence, your heart, your loving kindness. You're just my language escapes me, but my love is sent your way. I want to include for closing today, if I may, another friend of yours, Basil, Laura Carlson, who's a companion with you and me and many others, and is a songwriter and a singer. And I have asked her permission to close with the last stanza of her tribute to you. I'd like to do this now. Teacher, cherished friend, honorable veteran, kindness of men, we thank you from our hearts for the wisdom you impart. It remains as you remain, our teacher, and our friend.
Thank you.
Thank you, Basil. Thank your dear wife, Charlotte, too. And I thank Maggie and Mark who worked with you to bring us all together today.
Thank you.
It's so good to see you, to be with you. I miss you, of course. And you remain always with me and now with many others.
It was amazing. Thank you so much.
I want to say lastly, I hope I didn't hurt anybody's feelings. I was respectful.
No.
You were very respectful. Thank you.
Thank you, Basil. That was wonderful.
Thank you.
So wonderful.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank
So-
you. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing your wisdom, your great wisdom.
Mhm.
Thank you for
Don't-
joining our circle of friends.
Okay.
Doksha, Basil, Doksha.
Doksha. Means later.
Right. You don't say goodbye. You just say, see you
later. See you later.
See you later.
We're going to the same place.
Yes, we are.
And
Thank
I
you.
love your blending of the Lakota traditions and the new science and the new physics. It's amazing to me that you're holding all that at 90. What did you say, Pat? 91 years old? It's
91.
Wow.
You're a great role model for me.
Yeah, Basil is visited by people all over the world, scientists, historians, and they wonder how he knows all this.
Yes.
And within their culture, they hold this seat of wisdom. And so I'm just so honored that he could be with us